Don't go away. Those three words, I'm telling you, tear my heart out when I hear them. Because there have been those moments in my life when my children have spoken those words to me. And when they do, as their eyes are welling up with tears, as I see fear in their face, and they say, "Don't go away," it breaks my heart. They uttered those words when Jody and I might on occasion engage the services of a babysitter. We were going to sneak out and maybe catch a light dinner and then a movie, and the kids left with a babysitter would turn to us in tears and say, don't go away. Or you drop your child off on the first day of kindergarten. And as you make your way back out of the classroom, away from the school, they turn and with those sad eyes say, "Don't go away." My daughter, as a middle school student, had spinal surgery. We were leaving her room in the pre-op suite, and with terror in her eyes, she said, "Don't go away." Somewhere along the line, things flipped around. Next thing I know, my kid's going off to college, and I'm the one saying, "Don't go away." And then come the weddings. And I realize I'm no longer the most significant male in my daughter's life. And I want to scream, "Don't go away." The gospel story that I just read from Matthew is a story where Jesus tries to sneak away. Things have not gone well. If you've been following our services and our scripture readings the last several weeks, you know we've moved from a time where Jesus called the disciples and he taught them and he commissioned them and he sent them out, and it didn't go well for them. And when they came back, Jesus is trying to encourage them, to give them words that help them understand the task that they have been set to by God himself, to understand the challenges before them, to give them a sense of hope. But now it seems like everything has collapsed. We jumped over a couple verses in our reading of the Gospel of Matthew this week. What immediately precedes the lesson that I read, what immediately precedes this story of the feeding of the 5,000 is the story where things do not go well for John the Baptist. You see, there is a king, his name is Herod, who is feeding his friends at a birthday banquet. And following the main course, they serve John the Baptist's head on a silver platter. The cousin of Jesus, the one who would come before him, who was pointing to the Messiah, the one who would come, who would be greater than John, greater than all the prophets. Jesus had finally come. John was the one who had prepared the way. John had plowed the soil. Jesus could come and plant the seeds, but now John was murdered by a ruthless king. John was murdered in the most horrendous way. And when Jesus gets word that even John the Baptist had been beheaded, Jesus tries to get away. That's what we're told. When Jesus heard this, he withdrew to a deserted place by himself. Who could blame him? To get away from the turmoil, the chaos, the crazy making that was going on around him. He needed time to think. What would be next? Was the mission still intact? Would anyone listen and hear his words? And so he withdrew into a boat onto the lake to be alone. But Jesus was not the only one who had received word of John's death. John had a bit of a following. You remember him down by the river. People came from all the towns and villages. They came to hear his words, to be baptized by him. And so he was a bit of a rock star in his own right. And now, when he was killed by King Herod, all the villagers, all the people were up in turmoil. They took to the streets in some form of demonstration, in some form of confusion and rage. They took to the streets and they turned looking for Jesus. They heard that he was down by the lake shore. And so they ran there. Jesus did not go away. He stood in his boat and he looked at the crowd. 5,000 men alone, not including the women and the children. This huge crowd stood on the lake shore. They were dazed and confused. They were hurt. They were hungry. And Jesus did not go away. Maybe there was one in the crowd who yelled out, "Jesus, do not go." But the scripture tells us Jesus was filled with compassion. And so he brings the boat ashore. And as he comes ashore in the midst of this crowd, this mob of people, he looks in their eyes and he looks at their needs and he begins to heal the places that are sick. He begins to restore health and hope where there was only despair and confusion before. And yet all of the crowd that was there, all of the crowd was still hungering and longing. The disciples knew it. The disciples could see it. The disciples ran to Jesus and said, "They are hungry. This is overwhelming. Tell them to go away." But Jesus instead resets the whole mission, the whole intention of speaking about the reign of God. Jesus was the one who had called the disciples and said, "You would be about the task of proclaiming God's reign. You would be about the task of meeting the needs of my people. You would be about the task of sharing love and forgiveness and hope. And so, you feed them. We will not go away." Disciples, taken aback just a bit, do a quick inventory and they realize they don't have much. A few loaves, a few fish, that's all. And Jesus says, "That's fine, bring it here." Together in partnership, God and his followers will work to meet the hunger and the needs of the crowd that are pressing in upon him. Folks, we live in tumultuous times just as Jesus did. We're not looking at beheadings this week, but oh my gosh. We look at the crowds around us, the people in the street trying to make some sense of what is going on, some demonstrating, some acting out in inappropriate ways, trying to sort out which way we should go. Who do we listen to? Where do we turn? We feel sick to our stomach at times. We're sick of the COVID virus. We're hungering for some sense of hope in a time of despair. And the crowd is looking and wondering, will the people and the places and the things that we have come to trust remain with us? For many, their job went away. For many who used to see their family members or their grandchildren on a regular basis, it's as if they went away. For churches that met face to face, person to person, week after week, it feels like that has gone away. Don't go away is the secret longing of the multitudes. And in the midst of that plea, we hear the echo of the conversation that disciples are having with their Lord. Lord, make them go away. And Jesus says, no. You feed them. Take whatever meager things you have in your inventory, and you bring it here, and together we will use that to feed their hunger, to chase away those pains and those longings, to reset what it means to be a follower of Jesus and what it means to stand under God's compassion. We hear in this feeding of the 5,000 a call to the church to reset our understanding of what it means to be church, to provide and meet the needs of needy, longing people with the basic essentials that we have. The stories of good news, of hope, of love, of compassion and welcome, forgiveness and hope that will dispel the darkness, chase away the fears, and allow us to raise our heads once again and claim whatever a new normal will look like. A normal where we stand in strong relationship with God and with God's people. Death killed the voice of John the Baptist. But that death did not stop the voice of Jesus, who continues to speak through the church, through the scriptures, through disciples like you and me, whenever we share the compassion of God and speak the words of hope and forgiveness and new life that comes out of death. Don't go away. That is not the will of Jesus. Instead, we are called to return again and again when voices cry out in terror, in fear, in sadness. We will stand and journey side by side with the multitudes, because that is where God is found. That is where Jesus is, beckoning us to bring what you have and allow him to bless it so it can be given to our brothers, our sisters, and all the children of God.